wow, that's a card we haven't seen much of lately.
Yeah, Thundermaw Hellkite, I mean, a lot of these, like, so I've really started to describe what I kind of think is the evolution of this format. A lot of ways it's becoming like a trade binder format. So what I mean by that is a lot of these top decks, you know, you call them, you know, this is my blue, white, red trade binder deck, which basically means, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you go to an FNM and you just don't know what you're going to play, so you pull out your best lands and you go through your trade binder and you pull out all your really sweet mythics and put them in a deck together.
Trade binder control.
Right. So, yeah, Thundermaw Hellgate really goes over the top of a lot of those other cards.
So it looks like Chris Hollis won the die roll, led with Hallowed Fountain and Clifftop Retreat. Chris Andersen's Overgrown too.
Yeah, because of the lack of tempo in this format, or not necessarily, you know, zombies being the only really honest deck to the tempo of the format, you're going to see players getting progressively more greedy with their mana bases. And, you know, you can see that here is we've had one player lead off on Overgrown Tomb, Steam Vents, and Forest, while the other player already has Hallowed Fountain, Clifftop Retreat.
Right.
You know, 3 and 4 colors being represented.
Just a lot of really good mana fixing in the format right now, and no one's really punishing anybody else for it. No one is playing that hyper aggressive
deck.
Right.
There's not much of a penalty for putting your lands into play tapped, and as a result, you can get really whatever color you'd like.
Yep.
So Hollis, remember, he has to morph into the aggro deck here. You know, probably hoping to resolve something like an early Geist of St. Traft. He kept the hand with triple syncopate, I believe, and just lands.
Yeah, he has no threat.
Andersen having the very fair divination.
And we'll see if he found his 4th land. It doesn't look like he did. I think he's going to have to go to his discard.
So lay out to me, until Chris casts Omniscience, what is he doing up to that point?
He's kind of doing a whole lot of nothing. He's just trying to stay alive. He's casting those ramp spells, like you said. He might be casting an Increasing Ambition to get a Gilded Lotus, something like that.
Sure.
He might be casting a Thought Flare, of which he has 4 in the deck. Try and dig to his Omnisciences. He can just hardcast Thragtusk and start beating down, too.
Yeah, so between the Farseek, Ranger's Path, Gilded Lotus, Omniscience, really it seems like Chris's deck is pretty unwieldy until that turn where it wins.
Yeah.
4th land by Chris Hollis. At this point, I almost, you know, he's not, Chris still breaking on his land. Chris is letting all these divinations resolve, which I'm not positive is what he'd be wanting to do right now. Maybe probably he's waiting until he gets some sort of threat down.
Yeah, I think I would have countered that divination, though, just because if your opponent's missing on lands, I wouldn't want to let him get more.
So how under the radar is Chris's deck at this point, or Andersen's deck? If you're Hollis, do you know what's going on here when you see your opponent discarding Thought Flare and Angel of Serenity?
If I was Chris Hollis, I would be putting my opponent on some sort of crazy Unburial Rites deck right now. Because, he has the Angels, he has the Thought Flares.
It's gotta be like that Temporal Mastery that gets you wondering, you know?
Right, and now...
What's happening is Chris is explaining that actually how cleanup steps work is that if I say go to discard, and then you say okay, and wait to see my discard, you no longer have a window to play something on my end step.
Right.
End step happens before discard, so if you let me discard that card, you can't end step an Angel.
Right, Hollis would have definitely had to do that before Chris discarded. Chris gave him the opportunity. He said discard step. Chris said okay. So.
And here we come in just a haster, Thundermaw Hellkite for 5 damage.
Yeah, and that's pretty huge because Chris Andersen has no removal in his deck, with the exception of a Nico Bolas 1x.
So Ranger's Path from Andersen. Now his life total is going to be taken away very quickly. Hollis, remember, also has a Guide to St. Traft and Restoration Angel in his hand.
Yep, so Chris Andersen there getting those 2 white sources. He's looking to drop the Angel of Serenity as soon as possible.
Right, he still needs 1 more white source to make that happen. But the thing is that Chris, actually, because he has a grip full of syncopates, it's probably best for him here to play no more spells, and I think that's what we'll see him do. Just counter spell Chris Andersen out of the game. And that's exactly what he wants to do. He has the end step Restoration Angel, and 3 counter spells. Should be enough. And it's really that disruptive side to Chris Hollis's deck that I think makes this a very good matchup for him. I mean, I suppose one player's playing counter magic and the other player's playing a bunch of 7 and 10 drops. It probably has to favor the counter spell player.
Yeah, Syncopate is pretty darn good against Chris Andersen's deck. It is virtually a hard counter at every point in the game.
It's a 2-mana hard counter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Chris is just going to tap out every turn of this game.
for 5. I think Chris is going to attempt a Thrag Tusk.
Yep, which will surely be countered. He'll still have a Farseek after that, though, so he'll be able to do something with his turn.
Yep, and it's syncopated for 3, and then Chris uses his. He's going to Farseek.
This will go fetch up a Hallowed Fountain, getting him his 3rd blue and his 3rd white.
Right, 3rd blue. Is there's nothing triple blue here, but no.
Oh, that's right, too. Omniscience is double.
I believe it. No, Omniscience. No, you're right. Omniscience. Yeah.
Blue, 7.
Yeah.
Anyways, Andersen ships the turn, and Hollis attacks him to 5. And Andersen's going to be in rough shape, drawing a Gristlebrand. And,
yep. And that second syncopate will be enough. Chris Hollis takes down the first game. So when you have a package is full of large spells as Chris Andersen's deck, obviously you can't be very happy with this matchup. Syncopate is just such a fantastic card against you. One of the questions is there's not only so much you can do to really fix that sort of matchup. You can't change. Unfortunately, your strategy revolves around resolving spells that cost between 5 and 10 mana. You can't really change that about your deck. What do you do out of the sideboard here? What is available to you?
Well, I think there are a lot of transformative options you can do, and Chris Andersen kind of chose one of them. He has 4 Resto Angel, 4 Centaur Healer, 2 Caverner Souls to make any of those uncounterable, 2 Deathrite Shaman. So
right.
He might bring in that whole package. I'm not sure about the Deathrite Shaman, but
the Deathrite Shaman to me seems like it'd be something that would be a live play against a Reanimator deck possibly, or something where you'd actually want to. It seems to me like that's there to interact with their graveyard, on top of being, well, probably not a ramp spell in this metagame, but the Cavern of Souls I think we'll certainly see from him. One of the problems is that pre-board, there's just a lot of counter spells in Chris Hollis's deck. So for those of you, there's lots of different incarnations and different numbers in the blue, white, red decks. Chris Hollis' main deck is playing 2 Essence Scatter, 4 Syncopate, and 1 Dissipate. Outside of the board, he does get 2 Negates and 2 additional Dissipates.
Wow.
Which, if he decides to bring them in, will bring his counterspell total up to 11.
That is a heck of a lot of counterspells, more than we've seen, I think, in any deck in the current standard.
Right, we're getting, that certainly is a large number of counterspells, and if I'm Hollis, I'm playing all of them.
I think he's only missing Rewind from the legal counterspells in standard.
Definitely. So outside of that, he does have 2 Tamios if he were to, and I think those are probably excellent threats as well for Chris Hollis. He has a fair number of dead cards aside out. He's playing 4 Pillar of Flame and 3 Searing Spear in his deck. I think any or all of those can come out. So we'll see Chris really adopt a more blue role, as it were.
Yeah, Chris Hollis would just love to counter every relevant spell that Andersen played, and I expect we'll see him do that. We shouldn't see him counter the Divinations or the Farseeks. His style seems to be hold the counters for the very big spell, which usually works pretty well against these kind of decks.
Right, depending on what your grip is, that's typically the correct strategy. Because the thing about Divination, you may want to say, okay, it's a 2-for-1 to counter a Divination. But with the style of deck that Chris Andersen's playing, his mana, the mana costs on his spells mean that really, the biggest choke point in his deck is that he can only attempt 1 spell per turn. If he has 7-drop spells, you can let him Ranger's Path. You can let him draw extra cards. You're only going to get into dangerous territory when he hits, say 14 mana, and then goes 7 mana, 7 mana, which isn't very realistic. So as a result, you could let Chris draw all these extra cards. It's not really going to do much.
Right, because he can only play 1 spell a turn. Even if he gets up to 10 mana, then he goes, haha, I can now play a Thragtusk and a Thought Flare. Well,
okay,
he's
well,
still not really
the Thought Flare's not. Well, the
still.
Thought Flare's not a card again.
Right.
It's similar to playing Type 4 against someone. Counters in Type 4 or Counterspell is a very powerful card. It's probably better than a Divination.
Right, even though the Divination more powerful on the surface, definitely not as good.
For those of you who don't know what Type 4 is, I'm referencing I reference this a lot, especially in these really Haymaker style decks. It's a casual format in which players play without lands, and you have as much mana as you want, with the requirement that you may only cast 1 spell every turn. So you play off a shared library typically, and You play lots of spells which are very swingy and designed for the format. In a lot of ways, that's what Chris Andersen is doing.
Oh, definitely. Now, the deck that I like more than the style that I like more than Type 4 is it's like a Type 4 stack, but you can play any card face down tapped as a land, and that taps for any color, or face up, that taps for any of the colors in its mana cost.
Yeah. All right, well, we are on to game 2. Chris Andersen's on the play. He'll make, once again, we're going to see these greedy mana bases out. Both players starting out on Hallowed Fountains, into play tapped. No reason to really lose life here.
Andersen has a good start. He has lands, he has ramp. He's going for a turn 3 Ranger's Path and a turn 4 Gilded Lotus, it looks like.
So that's going to be so ramping the casual ramp from 2 to 4 to 7 to 11.
Wow. Yeah.
I like it. The ramp spells are getting progressively bigger. The turn 2 one makes 1 mana, the turn 3 one makes 2, the turn 4 one makes 3. I'm not sure. I mean, then it makes boundless realms. You could.
That's how it should be.
Which he's not actually playing, but.
So Andersen has a lot of options for his Farseek. He can get anything from Overgrown Tomb to Steam Vents to Hallowed Fountain to Temple Garden.
He's going to go with Steam Vents, so that sets him up on double blue and single of all the other colors. With the exception of black. I don't believe he has 1 Gristlebrand in his deck, but I don't believe he has the ability to cast it.
No, he's a couple lands short of that. He can cast his Nico Bolas though, if he has both Overgrown Tombs.
Yeah, he has an Overgrown Tomb in play. That's that's actually essential in the combo for the hard casting of the Increasing Ambition. Not the hard casting, sorry. Omniscience does not make your flashbacks free, so that spell is in there for that purpose. Turn 3, we'll see Divination from Chris Andersen. This time he has lands. Not as many as you'd think. Hallowed Fountain comes into play tapped. He has at least a 5th one, and will probably threaten to make a Thrag Tusk next turn. Alright, and turn 3, Geist to St. Traft comes on for Chris Hollis. Remember that since Andersen has very few sweepers, Hollis really just needs to get 1 threat down, but the roadblock's down with Thrag Tusk.
Yeah, and Andersen leans on this Thrag Tusk so hard. This is really his only way to stop a Geist, at least pre-board. I think Posty has Centaur Healers in his deck. I think I can see 1 in his hand right now, 2 in his hand. But the Thrag Tusk is the major stopper here.
And attack with Geist St. Traft. This to me is a pretty clear tell that Hollis has a 2nd Geist of St. Traft.
Oh, definitely.
Or possibly some sort of, he's kept in a burn spell, maybe a Pillar of Flame or something, but even so, I don't even like that line.
It looks like they're having a little friendly chat here, maybe with their tableside judge. Chris Hollis might have forgotten
as to whether or not the Angel should be there.
Yeah. Which, I mean, personally, this is a part of the new trigger rules that is really kind of odious. The fact that this kind of combat can happen.
Right. Where you, yeah. So when you're playing it looks like he's not going to be awarded the Angel token. A little bit of a rougher, scenario there. Yeah. So Geist will just hit the graveyard. I'm still not sure what the swing was. Whether he was just trying to push 4 damage. That's what it looks like. I think he feels a little under the gun here. Gilded Lotus will come down for Chris Andersen. Hollis is going to have to, he's going to have to syncopate it. He can't be happy about having to syncopate that.
Right, not what he'd like to be syncopating, but that card is just way too powerful in Chris's deck. Hollis might not know what he's ramping to, but he has to know that he's ramping.
I mean, when your opponent's playing cards like Ranger's Path, it doesn't particularly matter what he's ramping into. Your game plan's not going to change from Hollis' side of the table.
Right.
So Tameo the Moonsage comes down for Chris Hollis. It's going to tap down Thrag Tusk. Especially with a Tameo in play, it may have been a little premature to try to Geist aggro here. This is going to give Chris a window here, a very important window, and I think he's going to make the most of it. It looks like Angel of Serenity is going to come down.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he has his 7th mana, though. His best play might just be Centaur Healer, Centaur Healer.
He has a Cavern of Souls. He'll have to set it on Angel to cast the Angel of Serenity.
That is a cap.
He may have another land as well. Yeah. So yeah, Chris Andersen actually no Omniscience in his hand. He's actually he looks a lot like, a Reanimator deck right now.
Right. Yeah, but it looks like
he's going to say Centaur and then make 2 Centaur Healers and pass the turn.
Yep, Andersen up to 31 with 11 power on the board, just against Tameo.
Yeah, and this life gain is just you know, a really ubiquitous part right now of Standard. You can see these. Fortunately, we're not seeing a matchup where both players are on the healer Thragtusk package, but those definitely do exist, and those games can go a long time. Cavern is set on Cleric, not Centaur.
Tricky Chris Andersen.
Yeah, I think those are two equivalent creature types.
Yeah, I'm guessing those are the only clerics in the deck.
Yeah.
Unless Deathrite Shaman's second creature type is cleric.
I believe it's Deathrite Shaman's a wizard, but I will look it up. Oh, it's a shaman. Okay. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that that was a supporting creature type. All right, Deathrite Shaman's a shaman, for those of you following at home. Up to 6, Thragtusk is going to stay tapped, but Tamiyo is in a little bit of trouble here. And Thought Flare drawn by Chris Andersen. Remember that he has the ability to, he has another Centaur healer as well. A Hollis with with more lands than a Snapcaster Mage is really in a dire position here.
Yeah, he's just really under the gun here. Now, if I'm Andersen, I swing first. I see what kind of tricks Chris Hollis might have. And as we can see, he has a Snapcaster Mage.
Right, you don't want to see your spell get Snapcaster syncopated, because then the Snapcaster will block, giving your Tamiyo. You want to make sure that Tamiyo doesn't have a turn to draw 3 cards. I mean, you can't actually ensure that as Chris Andersen, but you'd rather Hollis just has to throw away his Snapcaster if he wants that to happen.
Right, now it's pretty easy for us because we can see Chris Hollis's hand, but even so, Andersen has to know that Snapcaster is a part of Hollis's deck. He just has to put him on that right now.
There's enough instance. I mean, if you're a blue tempo deck with counter spells, you have to assume the full set of Snapcasters pre and post board. Yeah. Cards too powerful to not be running that.
Looks like Andersen, though, gonna Thought Flare first.
He's actually doing this. Yeah, not a huge fan of plays. It allows Chris to get full value off his syncopate, though it actually works. So.
Yeah, I think Hollis thought that was maybe a bait spell. Maybe figured he didn't have to Snapcaster that. But his other option of letting Tamiyo die without a chump block seems too weak.
The bigger thing is that I think if I'm Hollis, he has to decide in his head whether or not it looks like he's deciding in his head whether or not he's committed to Snapcast or chump blocking here, and to me that tells me that he's not going to do that play.
Right.
So both of them attack Tamiyo.
And he goes to...
Yeah, so the reason he didn't make that syncopate play is that he wasn't going to chump block for Tamiyo.
Yeah, this seems tough, though. I'm not sure what Hollis' plan is here.
Andersen puts himself down to 29 for Hallowed Fountain, draws 2 cards, and now has a pair of Angels. Chris with just a 2/1, and draws another Syncopate. Not too much going on for him. We should see this game ending very quickly.
Yeah, usually when your life total is disappearing in 11-point chunks, it doesn't take more than an attack or 2.
So there's that pivotal turn where Chris taps out for Geist St. Trapped, and then Hollis taps out for Geist St. Trapped, and Andersen taps back for Thragtusk. And it's fair to say that that's the turning point of this game here. Like, how does Hollis come back from that board state?
That's really tough, and that's what's got a lot of top players recently saying that Geist St. Trapped is just no good right now. It's just not really a great card because that's the problem. Wow. Supreme Verdict.
I mean, it's good, but certainly not enough. Andersen still has lethal on the board actually. Sorry, not lethal. He has Hollis down to 1, but Andersen not phased.
No. Even in the face of Snapcaster Syncopate, even another Supreme Verdict coming, it shouldn't matter. Oh yeah, and here's an end of turn resto.
That should threaten lethal on the swing. Hollis will be able to chump block to keep himself alive.
Yep, and he'll have to draw another Supreme Verdict next turn.
Yeah, so going forward, what Hollis needs to do, he has to really hope that, so if Andersen resolves a Thragtusk, like, one of the dangers I'm looking at with Hollis' deck, how does he win through resolved Thragtusk?
Yeah, it's really tough for him, and that, in a 9-round tournament where you're sure to play against that many, many times, having your answers be Azorius charm it back to the top of their library, that's not going to do it.
No, it's really the Essence Scatters and Syncopates. So because that card, so really it's like, because that card is so powerful against him, it really should maybe be affecting how he's playing. Maybe he doesn't want to play that way because he knows that there's always a chance that Chris will just drop a Cavern of Souls and then make Thragtusk, to which he doesn't have a defense. But
And Hollis drops his hand. He can't do anything else. They're on to game 3.
all right. Yeah, so just really powerful card in Thragtusk. It really is able to erase most of the things that Hollis is doing. So he's got to try to be wary that guy doesn't get the game out of control. He did board in, it looks like, the 3 Supreme Verdicts out of the board and 2 Tamios. Those were all sideboard cards. We're saying board. Those weren't the first ones we were looking at. We were looking at actually the 4 additional counter spells. So assuming he has all of those in, that'll put him up to 9 sideboard cards. Which is fair. He has 7 main deck burn spells and can always shave Azorius Charms in this matchup, so it's very possible that he's using most of his sideboard this round.
Yeah, I think so. And he might not know what to, or especially after game 1, he might not have known what deck to put Andersen on, because all Andersen played was he played a Farseek, he played Divinations, he discarded an Angel of Serenity.
I'm still not sure he knows what deck to put Chris Andersen on.
Probably not. I mean, if you asked him if it had Omniscience in it, he might even not know what Omniscience is. That's such an obscure card, especially for a Standard player. So we'll see how he re-sideboards here. He saw a little bit more of Chris Andersen's deck. He's probably even more confused by the Centaur Healer's Restoration Angels.
Yeah.
I would be. So is it possible that Andersen morphed into just like a mid-range deck here? Could he have taken out all of his Omnisciences, all of his Increasing Ambitions?
So I think there's a possibility of that. The cards, yeah, especially with the ones we've seen him keep in, it really does seem like he's just morphed into a mid-range style deck.
Yeah, I think Andersen's sideboard probably looked something like -1 Gristlebrand, -1 Nicol Bolas, -2 Omniscience, -3 Increasing Ambition, plus, well, that's not enough cards. He would still have to cut 1 or 2 cards there.
He has Temporal Masteries to board out as well, which that's a card which I mean he can always keep in. It's fine. Because it doubles as a ramp spell, and it isn't bad when you're at 7 mana.
It's kind of like an Explorer.
When Miracles, it's an Explorer. Yeah. It's not a terrible card. I mean, it's obviously, I think it's subpar in the. Basically, Chris is becoming a Bant deck here. It's subpar there, but it's a fine card, especially when it's so good game 1s. The real question is what decks. So if he's boarding out the Omniscience in this matchup, which I think he should. What matchups is it where the Omniscience strategy is actually what you'd like to be doing? We looked at, Zombies, I don't think it's what you want to be doing. It doesn't seem to be what you want to be doing against Tempo. Is it against Jund? My hunch is that he's hedging his bets in like these Bant mirrors.
Yeah, for sure. Now I think the Omniscience is really against the kind of decks where you need a trump, and it doesn't really matter what that trump is. Chris Andersen happens to just be going infinite.
So it's good against the trade binder decks.
Exactly.
Yeah. So these decks are, people, it's like, I'm making Armada Worm, and I'm making, this other mythic rare, and you're like, when I'm making Win the Game, you're like, oh, that's good.
Exactly. I mean, people have these loops with their Angel Serenities, like, look, they can never deal with this because I'll always get back another Angel and a Thragtusk. Now, Chris Andersen takes the 7 mana out of that and just says, well, I'm just going to win on the spot.
Yeah.
So Hollis will be on the play for game 3. Both players on 7 cards right now, thinking about their openers. And Chris on 7, Andersen on 6. I keep calling them both Chris. It's probably not too helpful for you guys at home. We'll go with Hollis and Andersen. How about that? Or maybe the blue team and the yellow team.
Yeah. So, let's see. Interestingly enough, from Hollis's deck, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what he's doing inside the blue-white-red shell. For those of you reading on Star City Games this week, we had a lot of people talk about different incarnations of this shell. Reed Duke talked, and I believe Sam Black will talk about playing Goblin Electromancers in this build. I think Sam put some builds without Electromancer in them. But what I really like about these decks is kind of their flexibility. So, I've also seen decks of these types which are using, Desperate Ravings, for example, Rewind, Chris instead is he has 2 Detention Sphere. There's a lot of really strong cards you could be playing. It's more on. I want to talk a little about Chris Hollis' specific card choices. So we'll follow the game here too, though. Hollis starts out on. Both players start out once again on Hollow Fountain. Hollis is going to follow up with Sulphur Falls and Kessig Wolf Run for Chris Andersen.
The old Hallowed Fountain Kessig Wolf Run start.
Yeah, I mean, Andersen, you know, his mana is just so good. He's going to run Kessig Wolf Run. The turn 2 Geist Saint Draft comes down from Hollis. Andersen does not have a way to interact with that, and this is, I think, where Geist is really can be at his best. Yeah. Swinging for 6, Hollis snap on the Angel token.
Slams it into play. Andersen down to 14, needs to draw a green source this turn, or at least a spell he can cast. Miracle Temporal Mastery would be good right here. Nope, just another Hallowed Fountain. He's going to have to play it untapped and hold up Restoration Angel. And he might as well put that face up.
Yeah, he's gonna make it now, which is excellent. I know, it doesn't even bat an eye at that. Probably that Angel was a little aggressive by Hollis. I don't think he needed to do that when he had the counter spell in play. He really can just challenge Andersen. And especially with that untapped Hollow Fountain, it's very clear what Andersen is trying to do. I think just holding up Dissipate's probably the better play.
Yeah, I think so. Hollis, though, does have an Azorius Charm. He'll be able to put that Angel on top, getting in for 6 damage. Or no, let's see, 7 damage probably. Dropping Chris to 5 and locking this game up.
And actually, and with that 5th land, he can then Azorius Charm and Dissipate it on its way back down.
Yeah.
Or even at the very least, he has a 2nd Geist, he can just simply recast. He's going to charm the Angel to the top. Chris Andersen misses the top of the deck, doesn't care.
Chris Andersen does not want to start this tournament 0-1, this 9-round tournament.
I think he's going to, though, and he knows it too.
Yeah, he's dead. There's the handshake.
Chris Hollis defeats Chris Andersen 2 games to 1. That Geist on the play, I think, seems very good in this matchup. The problem is that Andersen, as we saw before, when it was on the draw, the turn 3 Geist, Andersen was able to follow up by just jamming a Thrag Tusk. On the play, he's just a turn. With the play on the other side, Andersen's just a turn too slow to make that play.
Exactly. He has to have Centaur Healer if he wants to stay in that game, and he didn't have it. He was on a mulligan. He had a slower hand. Just did not draw his green source in time.